Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about signs of trigonometric functions. So sine, cosine, and tangent, they are determined by the angle theta. The way we define these functions is by drawing the angle theta and locate the point xy and measure the distance from the origin, let's call it r. Now we just compute the ratios of these numbers. So sine theta is y over r, cosine theta is x over r, and tangent theta is y over x. And the way we define the value of r is by taking square root of x squared plus y squared. So the signs of these functions, they are really determined by the signs of x and y, because r is always positive. Depending on the location of theta, x comma y could be anywhere in the four quadrants. So there are four quadrants in the xy plane. And in the first quadrant, both x and y are positive. In the second quadrant, x is negative, y is positive. In the third quadrant, both x and y are negative. In the fourth quadrant, x is positive and y is negative. Now, if we look at the formula for sine theta, it's y over r. Because r is always positive, the sine of y will be the same as the sine of sine theta. So, in the first quadrant, sine will be positive. Second quadrant, sine is positive. Third quadrant, sine is negative. Fourth quadrant, sine is negative as well. Now let's look at cosine. Cosine is x over r. R is always positive, so the sine of x is the same as the sine of cosine. So look at the signs of x variable in the four quadrants. In the first quadrant, cosine is positive. Second quadrant, x is negative, so cosine is negative. The third quadrant, cosine is negative. In the fourth quadrant, cosine is positive. Now let's look at tangent of theta. It's y over x. So if both numbers are positive, tangent will be positive. If both numbers are negative, negative over negative, tangent will be positive. So that happens in the first quadrant and the third quadrant. And if the signs of x and y are opposite, positive over negative, or negative over positive, in these two quadrants, tangent will be negative. Now, if you look at the result, there is a certain pattern. In the first quadrant, you see all functions are positive. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive, cosine and tangent are negative. In the third quadrant, tangent is positive, other functions are negative. In the fourth quadrant, cosine is positive and other functions are negative. So these letters A, S, T, C tell you which functions are positive in those quadrants. And it's really handy if you remember these four letters A, S, T, C going around the circle, first, second, third, and fourth quadrant. So let me show you how to use these letters. So A, S, T, C. And suppose we want to determine the sine of, sine 150 degrees. Well, 150 degrees is in the second quadrant between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. Here's 150 degrees. So you see the letter S, that means sine is positive. So we know that this value must be positive. Okay, now here's another example. What is the sine of secant 200 degrees? Well, secant is 1 over cosine, so this is 1 over cosine of 200 degrees. And if cosine is positive, secant will be positive, and cosine is negative, secant will be negative. So we just need to determine the sine of cosine 200 degrees. And 200 degrees is a little bit more than 180. So here is 200 degrees. And the terminal side of the angle is in the third quadrant, and the letter in the third quadrant is t. It means that tangent is positive and sine and cosine are negative. So this cosine 200 degrees is negative, so secant 200 degrees is also negative. So as you can see in these examples, memorizing these four letters A, S, T, C is going to be quite useful. So the way you remember those letters is to remember this phrase: all students take classes. Going around the circle from the first quadrant to the fourth quadrant, all students take classes.